Dear brothers and sisters, what a joy it is to begin a new liturgical year together. As we light the first candle of our Advent wreath today, the whole world seems to pause. We enter into the season of waiting. But this is not a passive waiting. It is a vigilant and deeply hopeful expectation. Dear brothers and sisters, we live in a busy modern world that defined by instant gratification. We wait sometimes for packages, for the test result, for the weekend, and everything. We are waiting for those things. But Advent calls us to a different kind of waiting. What is that? A sacred pause. It invites us on our spiritual journey, and we may call it with three distinct destinations: the joy of Christmas that we are about to celebrate, Christ who came into 1,000 years ago, the grace of this very day, Christ who comes right now, and the hope of glory, Christ who will return at the end of time. So every Advent, we are not only preparing for ourselves to welcome Christ in a Christmas day, but we also are reminded for the second coming of Jesus, when we do not know the time. When Jesus spoke of his return, many people then, even we today, might have imagined it is a spectacular event in the heavens. But today's gospel brings us something very simple, yet profound: the awareness of being ready in our daily lives. We often do the same. So we caught up in the business of modern life, working again, responding to messages, attending meetings, replying emails, chasing goals, and plannings for the future. A lot of things that we are doing in our everyday lives. All of this, of course, is good. But we lose our sensitivity to God's presence beneath those things. We live like people in a, let me call it, in spiritual slumber. This is a spiritual slumber. So this is the great temptation of our modern world, because we used to be busy with all of our things. Our lives are filled with noise and with notifications, everything. And sometimes it's constant demands too. We run from task to task, but we risk running ourselves ragged without ever stopping to ask what I'm running toward. Or we become, sometimes, we don't feel it. We become spiritually dull, mistaking comfort for contentment and routine for purpose. We are at risk of missing Christ's coming, not because we are evil or because we are doing something bad, but because we are simply distracted of our business, everyday life. Yet the gospel of today from St. Matthew sounds a clear and startling warning that we must hear with open hearts. Therefore, you must also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Jesus uses the story of Noah to illustrate this point. The life was normal, like what we are doing right now. People were eating, drinking, marrying, and going about their routines. Yes, there is nothing wrong with routine, and there is nothing wrong with normal life that we have. But the danger lies in allowing the urgent things of life to make us forget the eternal things, which is that I call the danger is falling into spiritual slumber. That sometimes the prayer, we take it for granted. Often, it is simply we put off moments of intentional prayer of silence. Probably when we come back from our from our office and we go home, actually we had already planned we would like to pray, for example, the rosary with our families, but we put off moments of intention of prayer or silence because we are too exhausted of everything that is going on in the office, in our works, and everything. And also by the day's demands, usually. We delay seeking the sacrament of reconciliation, thinking that I'll do it later. Or my sins aren't that bad, so I can do it later probably. And sometimes too, we become so wrapped up in our lives, our own homes, and our schedules, that we fail to notice the neighbor, the colleague, or the family member who is desperately in need of a kind word or helping hand. Dear brothers and sisters, in the second reading, St. Paul reminds us, addresses us with urgency. It is the hour now for you to awake from sleep. For our salvation is nearer than when we first believed. So this is a call to awake from our spiritual slumber. The dawn is upon us. The darkness of doubt, anxiety, and self-interest must be cast off. It is the time to lay aside the work of darkness, gossips, resentment, pride, everything, and put on the armor of light. What is that armor? St. Paul tells us plainly, put on the Lord Jesus Christ. That's clearly in the second reading. And we get back to the first reading. The prophet Isaiah gives us the power vision that fuels our vigilance. He describes a world healed and centered on God, the mountain of the Lord. To this mountain, all nations will stream. There will be no division, no conflict, only instruction of the Almighty. And the most moving sign of this new era is total peace. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. This is a profound image. The very weapons we use for destruction will be transformed into instruments of creation and productivity for ourselves. The challenge of this Advent, as we start in the first Advent in this season, is transforming our swords. What are those things that we hold in our hearts, usually, or in our homes? It is bitterness, probably toward a family member, a friend, harsh criticism, or a spouse, children, a deep-seated unforgiveness over a past injury. God asks us to beat that sword into a plowshare of reconciliation and into pruning hook of compassion. He invites us to walk in the light. Advent is not just waiting, that we are waiting right now for the coming of Jesus, but it is also moving. Come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. And how do we walk? We, feet firmly planted in charity, with hands ready for service and with our gaze fixed on the coming of Christ. Isaiah's grand vision may seem at odds with Jesus' words in today's gospel, in Matthew, where he warns that the coming of Son of Man will be sudden, as in the days of Noah, when people were unaware of what was coming. But Isaiah's message is full of serene hope. And Matthew gives us a sharp warning. Yet they complement each other in today's reading. Isaiah shows us what we are waiting for, which is God's reign of peace and justice when hearts are converted and creation is healed. And Matthew shows us how to wait. So what we wait and how to wait. How to wait with alertness, readiness, and faithfulness in our ordinary lives. Jesus says that in Noah's day, people missed God's signs because they were absorbed in daily lives, eating, drinking, marrying, and etc. So once again, there is nothing wrong with those things. It is a normal. We do our works, we come back and do our shopping, Christmas shopping, everything. It is a normal. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we just missed, we don't keep our hearts awake for God's love. Once again, dear brothers and sisters, Advent calls us to do just that, to be awake, alert, and to live ordinary lives with extraordinary awareness. So we live our ordinary life, but with extraordinary awareness. Advent is not a season of anxious waiting, but of awakened living. If we want Isaiah's vision of a world transformed God's peace, that transformation must begin within ourselves, within us. We prepare for Christ's coming not by wistful gazing at the heavens, waiting something, but by living each day with what? With love, mercy, attentiveness, and walking in the light that God provides, especially in our Advent Eucharists, attending the Mass, in reading the Scriptures every day, and in our conversations with one another on how we examine our daily attitude, our words every day. That Jesus warned us, "Be alert, for you do not know of what day your Lord will come." We believe that in our context, Catholic faith, being ready does not mean we live in fear because of when Jesus comes and we fear. It's not, but living in full of awareness of God's love every day. That's why I said, with extraordinary awareness. Readiness is not a matter of time, dear brothers and sisters, but of an open, humble, and faithful heart. Saint John Paul II once said, "We are called to watch, not because we fear the future, but because we believe that God comes to save." That is beautiful. So, watching is not waiting in anxiety, but waiting in love. And we may not hear the angel's trumpet today, but perhaps God is knocking our hearts in small ways. Probably a friend who asks for time to be listened to. Or poor people on the side of the road who look for mercy, a call to forgiveness that we are still postponing. Being ready means being sensitive to God's greeting in simple things. Not just waiting for the end of time, but living lovingly every day as part of the journey to heaven. Once again, dear brothers and sisters, Jesus came not to frighten us, but to greet and save us. When we live in love, in faithfulness to Him, we are truly ready whenever He comes. We need not fear the day of the Lord, because a heart that lives in love is always ready to welcome Him. Like a lamp burning in the night, a life filled with prayer and love is a sign of true readiness. Let us keep that light burning in faith, hope, and love. And let this first candle we light be the flame of our active hope. Let us promise ourselves this week, I will wake up from my routine. I will disarm one sword in my heart, and I will perform one concrete act of love, preparing the house of my soul for the one who is coming. Each week, we will light another candle of our Advent wreath, a small sign of Christ's light growing stronger and stronger as His coming draws near. Though we await in darkness, We are not without light. We can name the darkness in our world, in our hearts, but we also recognize the light of Christ already guiding us through that darkness, step by step, Sunday by Sunday, until His light fills the world and there will be no shadow remains. Come, Lord Jesus, we await for you with awakened heart. May God always bless us, now and forever.